episode 337 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 2nd of June 2025. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Ciao.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello.
As we mentioned last time, it's been an awfully long time since we recorded, so we've got even more news, which is not that new anymore. But anyway, the first one. Redis is open source again, using the AGPL3, which is what they should have used in the first place. Why has it taken them this long? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, finally the proper license that they should have gone with. Because if they want to have a proprietary fork, then yeah, they can offer that. But if they want to make sure that nobody's stealing it, then this is exactly the one they should be using.
Why did they go through all of these like source available licenses and all of that palaver, pissing everyone off, getting forked, the fork now being the standard, Redis being old hat? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
It was a panic, right? It was a knee-jerk reaction because they thought that somebody was going to come along and steal all of the monies, because they very likely were, and they had to do something, and this was something, so they did it.
Right, but Valkey is now the standard, and if they just panicked and gone AGPL, Valkey probably wouldn't have happened, or maybe it would have happened, but they wouldn't have pissed people off.
I think a lot of legal departments or managers may have an issue with AGPL if they're not really used to that, because it sounds a bit scary. But I think it's absolutely perfect for this type of thing. And I mean, if you own all your copyrighted code anyway, you can make a fork that is proprietary and sell it to somebody who wants to also keep it proprietary. That's fine. But this is the exact license for making sure the likes of Amazon don't run off with your crown jewels and then sell it back to you at a cheaper and better price.
Yeah, and I suppose Valkey wouldn't have happened because you'd have had to have kept it AGPL, and so there would have been no point.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would have done its job then, wouldn't it? Like, there would be no reason to fork it then.
Yeah, it would have effectively forced the likes of Amazon to do a deal with Redis Labs. Again, I don't understand why it took this long.
I said, well, why don't Apple allow GPL software in the store that they have? It's, it's that whole, oh, we don't like that, it's dangerous.
Yeah, it's a viral license.
I agree with you. I don't know what the kind of management or leadership structure is like at Redis, but it feels like new people coming in, understanding the terms, but wanting to gamble, wanting to see if they could pull it off and keep control, and then just not accepting it when they couldn't, and they basically lessened their value. We should carve this in stone and put it somewhere for other people to see, like that quote, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. This is one of those things.
Carve it in stone like the Ed Stone, Ed Miliband's pages.
Yeah.
That worked out really well, didn't it?
Oh, God. They were happy times.
Writing stuff on buses next.
Yeah. Supercharging Ubuntu releases, monthly snapshots, and automation. So this is interesting. This is not about moving away from the 6 monthly releases and the LTS every 2 years. This is about having, as well as the daily images, monthly snapshots, as the headline suggests, that can then be a proper focus of testing, both by people and also automated testing. This is Ubuntu kind of moving into the modern era, by the sounds of things to me. This is good stuff.
I don't really understand why we don't have this by running the current development release anyway, which it's not a snapshot, it's a rolling release at that point, Release is coming every single day, good for testing. I don't really understand why a monthly snapshot is required.
Well, also in this post, John Seeger says, my goal over the coming months is to build a release process that takes advantage of modern release engineering practices. So it seems that it's about just improving the release process generally and bringing it up to date.
John listens, by the way. Have I ever told you? John Seeger.
All right. Well, hello, John. And I think this is cool. I think this is a good step towards achieving what you're trying to do here, and take inspiration from what the likes of George is doing with Universal Blue. And he says that in this post, which I know is going to piss you off, Phelim, but...
Well, I don't mind automated testing and stuff like that. That's totally fine. I just don't agree with read-only. Yes, I know it's not read-only operating systems. Somebody will write in and tell me how it's not like that, and you can do overlays, and I don't care.
I love the way more and more of what Phelim says he uses his silly voice. We can get to the point it's totally Phelim doing his silly
I can
voice.
hear the email galloping towards me.
Well, anyway, I think this is great. And I don't think we're going to see improvements necessarily straight away. This is something that's going to bear fruit long term. And that has got to be good for Ubuntu, which I use every day. And speaking of Canonical, they've committed to donating $120,000 a year, so 10 grand a month, to various projects that they use using this service called thanks.dev, which ends up being not that much per developer and per project, but funding FOSS is always good, and so I think it's worth giving them a shout out. Phelim, are you going to be moaning again like you did when Microsoft did something similar?
No, because you know what? Canonical doesn't have trillions like those fucking waste of space companies do, and they gave out like peanuts. A comparison, I think this is totally fine. It's nice. Obviously, more is better, but I think it's good to see money come towards projects. And as long as it's not got a 56-page PowerPoint presentation that they need to walk through every week to verify that they're keeping on tabs for their $252.
All right. Fedora 43 cleared to ship with Wayland on GNOME.
I've been running Wayland exclusively with GNOME for the last 7 or 8 months, and it hasn't crashed once. So I'm prepared to accept that it is actually ready now.
Same with KDE. I've been running it for ages. It's totally fine. I've probably seen as many crashes as I did with X11, which is maybe 1 or 2.
One day I dream of running Wayland on XFCE.
No, I'm sorry, Joe. You don't get to have that.
I can't have nice things. I've chosen to not have nice things, haven't I?
Stop hitting yourself.
Well, Joey at OMG Ubuntu wrote about how GNOME dropping X11 may actually be bad for Ubuntu because at least one more LTS was going to support the X11 session. But GNOME have just decided, no, fuck X11, we're done.
I think that's the only way. I think what we've seen with X11 is that people will hold on to the bitter end, and I count myself in their number. And unless GNOME had forced me to, or rather Ubuntu had forced me to, and not really forced, encouraged me very strongly, made it the default, I probably wouldn't have gone with it, and therefore no bugs would have got logged, and therefore it wouldn't have improved. So I think it's the right thing to do. We do have to, and this is me saying this, we do have to move forward.
Yeah. And if you think about 2604, that is going to be supported for 12 years. Like, you can't realistically expect X11 to still be running in 12 years, can you?
I'll take that bet.
Let's rewind to 2012.
Yeah. Well, and GNOME also has a new executive director called Stephen Dearbold. I think that's how you say it. And he sounds quite promising. He's actually been a GNOME user. He's a developer. He's an entrepreneur, so he knows people. I mean, because his job is basically fundraising. But unlike some of the previous occupants of this position, he is really technical, actually uses GNOME. I think it's a great appointment, personally, by the sounds of things. Well, time will tell, obviously, but from reading his post about this and reading a little bit about him, I think this is going to be great for GNOME.
He had a shocking story where he had a bicycle crash and ended up being, I think, partially or legally blind from it.
I think in one eye, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, not to sound like, oh, it's good that he is, because that means that, usability and GNOME will get better, but it is nice that there's a champion for that percentage of users there as well in an official capacity, so they can't ignore it and make forced developers to do work on that. So I think that's great, if that's the right way to say that.
Yeah, it's an awkward thing to say, isn't it? But yeah, if accessibility improves because of that, then there will be a good outcome. Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to say.
Frankly, Stephen, I'm glad you're blind, because you're going to make everything.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by porkbun.com. Porkbun was named the #1 domain registrar from 2023 to 2025 by USA Today and is refreshingly different from the big name players. They're proud to offer at-cost, no markup prices on hundreds of different domain extensions, plus powerful hosting options and incredible support. They've got everything you need from .com domains to specialist ones like .pro, .dev, and .xyz. Every domain name at Porkbun comes with tons of freebies like SSL certificates, Whois privacy, DNS, URL forwarding, and hosting trials, because why pay for things that should be free, right? All of these features and tools are backed by incredible support 365 days a year from real humans. And if you do a quick search, you'll see that Porkbun has thousands of 5-star reviews from actual customers. So support the show and go to porkbun.com/LNL25 to get $1 off your next domain name from Porkbun and see why they are the best domain name registrar around. That's porkbun.com/LNL25. Google teases Android desktop mode made with Samsung's help. So this is kind of a follow-up to what we talked about a couple of months ago. It's official now. We are going to get an Android desktop mode, and it's not made in competition with Samsung's DeX. It's kind of with help from them, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, can't wait. I hope it runs on your folded phone. And the question will be, will your folded phone still exist in time to run it?
Of course it will.
Uh-huh.
Of course it will.
Yeah.
Look, I think that this is really cool. This is the dream of convergence that we've had for well over 10 years. And it's never worked before, but it will definitely work this time.
Uh-huh.
I do think it's kind of cool. I don't know if that's just the nerd in me that likes it. Like sometimes I'm traveling and I decide not to take a laptop because I'm just taking my Steam Deck. And there have been times where I've had to do something Linuxy and I've used my Steam Deck instead. And I could see myself using a phone if I was able to plug it into something and use it that way. Or I don't know if there's some kind of RDP desktop running on my phone that I could get to that is my environment. But is that just me being a geek? I don't know. I still like the idea.
Well, yeah, I don't think this is going to have mass appeal, but I think that it's almost a byproduct, because really what this is about is having adaptive applications that can work on different form factors like tablets, cars, Chromebooks. Now that's going to be based on Android.
Yeah. Too many apps make assumptions about screen size, and I hate that. I like to try and split my screen up, of course. And yeah, they're too fixed in the form factor of a phone. So I like the idea that they're being told not to assume anything in terms of screen size and to allow for adaptive scaling of the UI.
Yeah, and I think that convergence thing is going to come as a byproduct of them wanting Android to be on loads of different form factors, including the Chromebooks. And I don't think many people are going to use it. And I probably won't use it much, but it's still a cool thing.
The problem I would have with it would be, where is it going to be in the stack? Are they going to bolt it into some horrific Play type service where only Google blessed devices are going to have it? Because then I think its usefulness dwindles fairly spectacularly.
All right, Mr. Weird Lineage guy.
Just saying. I don't think convergence of the proprietary desktop is what I was looking for, that's for sure.
Maybe, though. Maybe it will inspire Linux people to try again.
I don't think you're being very nice.
After 25 years, Linux Format magazine is no more. Graham, you were the editor briefly, and you worked there for about 9 years, I think we worked out. So you must be sad about this.
I am. I think I even took to social media to say how sad I was to see that Linux Format has come to the end. And I wrote there, honestly, that the Linux Format changed my life. And it really is no exaggeration. When I think it was 2003, and I was a bit lost and didn't know what to do and applied to be the staff writer. It gave me a purpose. I realized I enjoyed writing, and it was Linux, of course. And I've made friends there who are still friends to this day. I loved working there. I loved journalism and publishing and the magazine and the readers and the podcast that we launched. It was hugely fulfilling. Terribly paid, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I still maintain that the podcast was the best bit about it.
Maybe it was. I think we could have capitalized on it more. we were aware that it was popular, and it obviously allowed us to try and do Linux voice. And maybe we missed something there in making, because obviously Future has kind of effectively failed to, I don't even know if there's a solution to make money out of these niche magazines when their sales are probably low, 20,000, 15,000 copies, which for independent magazines, they seem to be able to make it work. But for a large organization like Future, it's just probably not worth them continuing. There's so many things that, we met nearly everybody in the Linux and open source world, interviewed so many people, kept on top of so many projects, see so many things change over that time. And while it's been over 10 years, I think, since I left, I still desperately missed it and kept in touch with the people, even the people running the magazine, under the circumstances, which is great considering the circumstances under which I left, and Andrew, Mike, and Ben and I left. So they were very generous in that way as well.
Yeah, I remember when you set up Linux Voice and you officially couldn't be involved because of your contract or something.
Yeah, that's right. I had a no-compete clause. And that was a difficult time. But this is why I'm probably terrible at business. But I didn't want to leave Linux format in the lurch, particularly. And we did help Linux format set it up for the months in our absence, which I don't know whether that was a wise thing or an unwise thing.
You should have destroyed all the backups and then trashed the computers on the last day.
Yeah, and we didn't do that. And actually, Neil, who took over as the editor when we left, really did an incredible job and is a generous person and managed it with, I think, great wisdom and tact. For probably what's been a difficult 10 years at Linux format after we left, with budgets probably decreased continuously, probably, I don't actually know, but probably not enough for a team to work on it even. It was probably Neil who was the main kind of load bearer for all the work that went on in the magazine, even if other people were kind of commissioned to do separate parts. And that's the way magazines have gone. I understand it. The internet's taken over and people need a quick fix, but it's sad.
It feels like there was just no way it could continue for much longer. And there's Linux Magazine as well, isn't there? Surely that hasn't got much legs left. Are people really reading magazines in 2025 and beyond?
So I don't know any of their sales numbers. I subscribe to a couple of magazines myself, and they're pretty niche. And going on the numbers that we had with Linux Voice, for example, I think if we'd done it differently, if we accepted there was enough there basically for one person with a relatively low salary, with commissioning work out to people who did things for very little, I think it could work if it's like a passion for a group of people. But of course, Future isn't a passion-driven enterprise, probably. So that's not going to work. But I do think, I've got two daughters, they love artifacts now as they're becoming known. They do buy records and CDs. And I think there's probably still in something in a very modest way. Maybe this is my naivety again, which is like a theme for me. But I still think with very modest sales and expectations, it could work. But magazines were driven entirely by ads. That's the other important thing. People often say, well, why don't you do a digital only copy? But in fact, the great expenditure for magazines wasn't the printing, it was you spent it on commissioning people to write things and the artwork and the salaries of the people who were working on the magazine. The print was a relatively small part of all of that, so it didn't really affect things if you made it digital only. So you needed to have this dominant position to be able to have a dominant position in terms of your sales proposition to people who wanted to put adverts in the magazine. So you lose all that effectively and you just become an artisan, craftal artifact producer.
You mentioned a couple of niche magazines that you're subscribed to now. What we're talking Nave?
Yeah, for synths.
Oh, right. Okay.
No, I subscribe to The Wire and Electronic Sound. So, they can't. Electronic Sound was a crowdfunding magazine. And what is remarkable about Electronic Sound, it's about a kind of certain era of electronic music, I suppose. But it's beautifully produced. The paper's wonderful, the design is wonderful, and the writing's really excellent. So I don't know how they do it for how few they sell.
Yeah, producing artifacts to go in a museum.
That's right. Put on the coffee table and sip your latte and avocado on toast.
Which, in my mind, begs the question, retro computing magazines, there seem to be some, let's say, more than two. They must be on a shoestring. That must be a very niche market. Or rather, is that not appealing to the artifacts market, and so they're seeing better circulation? What do you think the future holds for that sort of niche magazine, which is somehow relevant today?
I think these artifacts, they have a pool of people who will stay loyal until the day they die. And I think the magazines are basically in it with that crowd, you know, keeping 80 or 90% of that crowd for the next 5 or 10 years. And so they're probably doing okay with this kind of gradual wind down, unless they hit lucky and, you know, and retro becomes big again, which it seems to be, actually.
What a familiar story that sounds as someone who produces podcasts, Graham.
But I mean, probably in this podcast, you can see that framed right, even if the demographic isn't necessarily changing in the way that we would like, it does sustain itself. And I think that's probably the same for those retro magazines. And I think it could be the same for Linux Magazine.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Tailscale gives you secure remote access to any resource anywhere in the world, whether that's databases, servers, Kubernetes, on-prem boxes, virtual private clouds, desktop PCs, 3D printers, or offsite backups in your friend's garage. Connect anything and everything you want, wherever it is, and get started in minutes. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, and you get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free with no credit card required. So support the show and go to tailscale.com/LNL and try Tailscale out at home or at work today. That's tailscale.com/LNL. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. Let's do some discoveries then. Will, you've talked about Frigate before, but there's a new release.
Well, there's a new beta release. There should be a new release in about another month or so, but the beta is proving pretty good so far. There hasn't been a release for about, knocking on for 6 months now, I think, so it is due one.
Just a reminder, this is real-time object detection for IP cameras.
Yeah, and some of the new features are exactly that. One is face recognition. You don't have to use the paid-for model via Frigate Plus. You can use a free model or their model trained on your own data for face recognition. And so when you or one of your family walk past the camera, it will be able to tell it's you. The other one is license plate recognition, which is also very useful. And the most important feature, in my view, is the ability to toggle the camera on and off via Frigate. If you've got an IP camera and Frigate is hooked up to it, it is constantly pulling frames from that camera. And so if it's over Wi-Fi, it's constantly trying to, poll and download frames. Most of the time, if you're at home, you don't want that on, yet you're still pulling frames from that camera. With this new version, 0.16, you can actually turn that off. And so if you disable a camera, you will stop talking to it until you turn it back on again. So it looks like a very promising release, and I'm looking forward to trying it out.
Would it have any aircraft recognition capabilities?
You could teach it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think you need to get training a model failing. That's right up your alley, isn't it?
It is.
Failim, auto dark mode in Plasma.
This comes from friend of the show, Jeffrey Bowder, and it is a way to, based on time of day, get your dark mode enabled or light mode enabled. So, I mean, I don't know what you'd set your clock up on yours, Joe, but for the rest of our humans, it would be bright during bright daylight hours probably and dark when it gets to evening. And it uses Koi, which is a project which allows you to set like the two states. I mean, it calls it light and dark, but I guess you could do any sort of thing. You could make it one red, one purple, if that's what your choice is. You set time, schedule, and it can ripple down into things like your terminal settings. So you can have like a, black background in your terminal, or should you be a heathen, you can also then enable a white background in your terminal, in which case it should format your hard drive. But anyway, and Jeffrey goes through a whole load of stuff here and how to set it up, and a couple of scripts that can change profiles in console, because that wasn't quite as easy by default, and he figured it all out. So it's quite a cool setup, and it would be nice to see a bit of this go back up into Plasma, and I think there actually are some moves with that coming along. There's certainly a wallpaper thing coming in, I think 6.4, that enables you to change wallpaper based on time of day. And there is some stuff that Axeli, who's also another friend of the show, he was working on some stuff where there is some profile state saving that you can set up. So he's got a good blog post on that too. So automatically customizing your desktop, quite cool. I'm far too much of a crank, and I just sit inside my dark cave with dark mode enabled, and I don't need any of it. But I know there are other people out there with, get out in the world.
Well, I, like many people, have discovered Fender Studio, which is not open source, which is not ideal, but it is a digital audio workstation, and it is available for all the platforms. So it's available for iOS and Android. It's available for Windows and macOS. And there is also a flat pack for Linux.
What?
From Fender, a huge company. This is just incredible to me that Linux is just there alongside the other platforms. I mean, that said, it is a pain in the ass to get working. You have to have jack and all sorts. And I couldn't get real-time monitoring. So what I was particularly interested in is it's got loads of Fender amps in it, like really expensive, like Fender Bassman and that kind of stuff. And I was very keen to try that. But I couldn't get it with my audio interface, at least, to give me real time. So I'd have to record a guitar part, and then when I played it back, it would be through the amp, which I'm sure would not be a problem on the other platforms. And I'm sure if I stuck at it and worked out the jack stuff, it would be, usable.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Well, indeed. But I just you think that is so cool that this huge company, hugely well-known company at least, added Linux to the lineup. They didn't have to do that.
Surely that means something, though. Does that not mean that somewhere there's a groundswell of audio engineers maybe creeping in that direction? That maybe perhaps the likes of Ardor and that are maybe having an impact on recording places where they're just fed up getting the whole, you have to rent your software now and it, only lasts for a couple of years and then you have to change all your hardware again. Maybe that is actually playing off. I mean, why else would they do it? There's zero reason they would do that otherwise. The big crossover between Fender guitar players and Linux users,
Yeah, I can't fathom it.
Yeah, it is really strange. It's a shame it's Fender, but
Yeah, I know you hate Fender and all the rest of it. Well, I've got a couple of Squires and I like them alongside my Gibsons.
There's no accounting for taste.
But it's also interesting that they picked Flatpak. That, to me, demonstrates that Flatpak has very much won this desktop software on Linux war, or friendly competition, shall we say.
I think it demonstrates anti-Ubuntu sentiment at Fender's open source team.
I think that's a better, more accurate characterization of the state of affairs.
The thing is, though, they put it out as a Flatpak and nobody was vocal on Reddit or whatever saying, why couldn't they have done a snap?
Yeah,
but if they'd done a snap, it would have been just pages of people raging, why is there no Flatpak? Fuck snap, all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that shows that whoever was responsible for this understands the Linux community.
Yeah, that is true.
But it seems like a pretty capable DAW. I only played with it briefly. I think I might have to try it on some other operating systems to get a sense of it, of what it can do, and then try and replicate that on Linux maybe. Or maybe I'll stick with Linux, I don't know.
Be interesting to see a comparison, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the business model behind it? Is there like a paid-for version or add-ons that you pay for?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I don't know what the business model is because it is just free. So I didn't even have to register because most of these free, as in beer, audio tools, like I was looking for some drum software recently, there's always a sign-up wall there. So they want you to have an account and then they upsell you on stuff. So I didn't have any of that with downloading this. So I don't know. I really don't know what the business model is, whether it is just to raise the profile of the brand, selling expensive guitars and amps and pedals and stuff. I mean, it just so happens that I plugged a Fender cable from my guitar into my interface. And, you know, maybe next time I'm buying a cable or whatever, maybe I'll think of Fender. It could be that simple. I don't know. But you're right, Graham. Like, there's always the risk of a rug pull here that they'll start charging for it.
What's perfect pitch in a Fender? Throwing a Telecaster into a skip from 25 meters.
How dare you? How dare you? I've got a lovely purple sparkly Telecaster.
Oh, shit, I know. I've seen the pictures. It's terrible. But anyway, carry on.
Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff, but we'll have to see. Until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.